I spent 3 months building her birthday party. Not just organizing it. Building it. Every reservation, every flower arrangement, every bottle of imported champagne had my fingerprints on it. I wanted the night to feel unforgettable for my wife, Eleanor. 4 years of marriage deserved that much. Maybe more. The rooftop venue overlooked the city skyline, glowing gold beneath the summer night. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers while crystal lights shimmered above 60 guests dressed in black tie. I had orchids flown in from Singapore because she once told me, half asleep against my chest, that they reminded her of luxury and romance. I remembered everything she ever said. That was my problem. Eleanor looks incredible, as someone whispered near the bar. She did. The silver dress hugged her perfectly, elegant without trying too hard. Her dark hair rested against her bare shoulders while she laughed beside co-workers and friends like she belonged in a magazine spread. Watching her smile used to make me feel successful. Needed. Loved. Nathan Cole, 36 years old, standing in a tailored black suit with tired eyes and a loyal heart. The husband who stayed late at work so she could chase bigger dreams. The husband who paid for this entire night without hesitation. I watched her across the room and honestly believed I'd done something right. Then she reached for the microphone. The room softened into silence. At first, I smiled. I thought she was about to thank me. Instead, she lifted her champagne glass toward a tall man near the front table. Adrian Cole. Her co-worker. The one whose name had started appearing more and more during late-night conversations. My guiding light, as she said warmly. The crowd chuckled politely. Adrian lowered his head with a modest grin while Eleanor kept talking about how he supported her through difficult months. How he understood her ambition. How he inspired her. I stood completely still. Not once did she look at me. My chest tightened slowly, like invisible hands were squeezing the air from my lungs. Still, I told myself to wait. Maybe she was building toward something sweet. Maybe I was overthinking. Then she turned toward me with a playful smile. Nathan, as she said, I got you something too. Guests laughed softly as she handed me a small black gift bag. The room watched. I smiled automatically and reached inside. A folded designer t-shirt. Black fabric. White lettering. One word. Divorced. The silence hit harder than the music ever could. A few nervous laughs escaped somewhere behind me, but most people just stared. Eleanor covered her mouth dramatically like she delivered the joke of the century. Come on, she teased. It's funny. Funny. My fingers tightened around the shirt while heat crawled into my face. 4 years together. Every compromise. Every sacrifice. Every night spent trying to become the man she needed. Reduced to a punchline. And Adrian? He was smiling. That broke something inside me. Not loudly. Quietly. Dangerously. I could have shouted. God knows part of me wanted to. I imagined throwing the shirt across the rooftop and watching her perfect party collapse into chaos. Instead, I reached calmly into my jacket pocket. The Cartier bracelet rested inside a velvet box against my palm. Gold. Elegant. Expensive enough that I skipped buying myself a new watch this year. I walked toward the cake table slowly. The crowd parted without speaking. Then I placed the bracelet beside the champagne tower where everyone could see it gleaming beneath the lights. No speech. No anger. No scene. Eleanor's smile faded slightly. I looked at her one final time, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw absolutely nothing behind her eyes that felt like home. Then I turned and walked away. The elevator ride down felt endless. My heartbeat thundered inside my skull while the city lights blurred beneath tears I refused to let fall. Outside, cold wind slammed into my face, but it barely touched the numbness spreading through my chest. Behind me, somewhere above the skyline, my marriage was still pretending to be a celebration. My phone buzzed before I even reached the parking lot. Eleanor. I ignored it. Then it rang again. And again. By the time I slid behind the wheel of my black sedan, the screen was glowing non-stop in the darkness. I stared at her name for 3 full seconds before tossing the phone onto the passenger seat. The engine started. The calls kept coming. And somewhere between the rooftop and the highway, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't driving away from a party. I was driving away from my entire life. I drove for nearly an hour before realizing I had no destination. The city lights smeared across the windshield while Eleanor's calls kept flooding my phone like a desperate heartbeat refusing to die. 30 calls. 40. 50. By the time I pulled off the highway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I parked outside Marcus Hale's apartment just after midnight. He opened the door wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie, took one look at my face, and stepped aside without asking questions. That's the kind of friend Marcus was. "Bees in the fridge," he muttered quietly. I nodded. No explanations. No pity. Just silence and space. I sat on his couch while rain tapped softly against the windows. My suit still smelled like expensive perfume and rooftop champagne. Every few seconds my phone buzzed again against the coffee table. Eleanor. Again. 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 Marcus glanced at the screen finally. "You gonna answer?" "No." "You sure?" I looked at the glowing phone, jaw tightening. If I hear her voice right now, I'll go back. That answer surprised both of us. Marcus leaned back slowly. "Then don't answer." Around 3 in the morning, the calls finally stopped. I picked up the phone carefully, almost afraid to look. 157 missed calls. My stomach twisted. Not because I missed her. Because she suddenly cared now. I switched the phone off completely and dropped it onto the couch beside me. Silence rushed into the room like oxygen after drowning. Marcus disappeared into the kitchen before returning with 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed me one and sat across from me beneath the dim apartment light. "You know," he said quietly, "you don't come back from something like that." I stared into the amber liquid. Part of me wanted to argue. To defend her somehow. to explain that Eleanor could be careless with jokes, that she loved attention, that maybe the party got out of hand. But another voice inside me whispered something colder. She humiliated you because she thought you'd stay. That truth hurt worse than the shirt. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Adrian smiling beside her while the crowd stared at me like I was entertainment. By morning, my chest felt hollowed out. Marcus handed me coffee and sat near the window while the city slowly woke beneath grey skies. "What now?" he asked. I rubbed my face slowly. "I don't know." But memories kept surfacing whether I wanted them or not. The promotion I turned down because Eleanor didn't want me traveling. The apartment I paid for after she convinced me renting looked cheap. The weekends I spent helping her prepare presentations while my own goals collected dust somewhere in the background. Every sacrifice suddenly looked different in daylight. Not loving. Pathetic. I gave her everything, I muttered. Marcus snorted lightly. "Yeah. And she handed you a divorce shirt in public." The bluntness hit hard because it was true. I stood and walked toward the window, staring down at traffic crawling through the wet streets below. Somewhere out there, Eleanor was probably crying now. Regretting it. Explaining herself to friends. Maybe even blaming me for leaving. But none of that changed the image burned into my mind. Her smiling while I broke apart. My phone stayed off for 2 days. No calls. No texts. No explanations. And for the first time in years, something strange started happening inside me. The constant pressure to please someone disappeared. I woke early on the third morning before sunrise and pulled on an old pair of running shoes buried near the back of Marcus's closet. "You run now?" he asked sleepily from the kitchen. "I need air." The cold outside punched straight through my lungs as I started jogging down empty streets. My legs burned within minutes. My breathing turned ragged fast. But I kept moving. 1 block. Then another. Then another. Each step felt violent. Necessary. Like I was outrunning the version of myself who stood smiling at that rooftop party pretending love meant sacrifice without limits. By the time the sky turned pale grey, sweat soaked through my shirt and steam rose from my skin in the freezing morning air. I bent forward, hands on my knees, fighting for breath. And suddenly I realized something terrifying. For the first time since walking out on Eleanor. I didn't want to go back. Not to the apartment. Not to the marriage. Not to the man I used to be. I straightened slowly, chest heaving, staring at the sunrise bleeding across the city skyline. Then my phone vibrated inside my pocket. One new voicemail. Unknown number. But somehow, I already knew it was her. The voicemail sat unopened for 3 days. I listened to it sitting alone in my apartment after midnight, one hand wrapped around a glass of whiskey while rain drifted softly against the balcony windows. Her voice cracked immediately. "Nathan, please call me back." Silence. Then breathing. "I know you hate me right now, but please, just let me explain." I deleted it before she finished. Not because it didn't affect me. Because it did. Too much. The apartment looked different now. Cleaner. Simpler. I'd thrown out the ridiculous velvet pillows Eleanor loved and replaced them with dark grey blankets and bookshelves. The place finally felt masculine again. Quiet. Mine. I started running every morning before work. 5 miles turned into 6. 6 turned into 7. My body changed fast, but the real difference happened in my head. The anger slowly burned itself into discipline. At work, Vincent Brooks noticed immediately. "You're different lately," he said one afternoon while dropping a project file onto my desk. "How so?" "Sharper." He smirked. "Meaner, too. I like it." For the first time in years, I stopped apologizing for ambition. I stayed late. Led meetings harder. Stopped asking permission before making decisions. And strangely enough, people respected me more for it. 3 weeks after the party, Evelyn Carter filed the divorce papers quietly, exactly how I wanted. No public drama. No screaming battles over furniture or money. Eleanor signed them faster than expected. That surprised me. Until Natalie Quinn called. "She's falling apart," and Natalie admitted carefully over speakerphone one evening. I stayed silent. "She lost Adrian too." That got my attention. Apparently, Adrian resigned from the company suddenly after rumors started spreading about him and Eleanor. Nobody knew the full story, but office gossip moved fast. People connected dots. Her reputation took a hit. Then her podcast failed. Then sponsors disappeared. Then followers started mocking the birthday party online after somebody leaked photos from that night. One image kept circulating everywhere. Me holding the divorced shirt. I should have hated seeing it. Instead, it reminded me why I left. "You okay?" Natalie asked softly. "Yeah," I answered honestly. And I was. That was the strange part. I expected heartbreak to feel louder. Messier. But rebuilding yourself is quiet work. It happens in early morning runs and empty apartments, and choosing your own peace over somebody else's chaos. A week later, I found her letter. It was tucked beneath old mail near the apartment door. 4 handwritten pages folded carefully inside a cream envelope with my name written across the front in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. I stared at it for almost a full minute before opening it. The first line hit immediately. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny. Because people always say that after they destroy something beautiful. I sat beside the window and kept reading. Page after page spilled apologies across expensive stationery. Memories. Regret. Excuses wrapped carefully inside emotion. She wrote about our beach vacation 2 summers ago. About how safe she felt falling asleep beside me. About how she missed the version of us before ambition and attention poisoned everything. Then came the part that mattered most. "I didn't realize how much I needed you until you left." There it was again. Needed. Not loved. Needed. The difference suddenly felt enormous. I lowered the letter slowly and stared out across the city lights while tension tightened along my jaw. She missed stability, protection, consistency. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a man with needs of my own. I became support beams holding up her life while mine slowly disappeared underneath hers. And the second I collapsed publicly, she panicked. I finished the final page quietly. "I'm sorry, Nathan. I'd do anything to fix this. Anything. But not before the humiliation. Not before Adrian. Not before 60 people watched her reduce our marriage into entertainment." The timing mattered. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my desk drawer beside the Cartier bracelet. Two ghosts sleeping beside each other. Then I stood, grabbed my keys, and headed downstairs for my nightly run. Cold air hit my face instantly as I started moving through the dark streets. My breathing steadied mile after mile while the city blurred around me. Pain used to chase me during these runs. Now clarity did. Halfway across the bridge overlooking downtown, my phone buzzed inside my pocket again. This time it wasn't Eleanor. It was Vincent. "You awake?" he asked the second I answered. "Barely." "Good," he laughed. "Because I just got confirmation." "Confirmation for what?" A pause. Then the words that changed everything. "Nathan, they want you in Milan next month to speak at the International Leadership Summit." Milan changed something inside me. The conference hall glowed beneath towering chandeliers while hundreds of voices echoed through the massive auditorium. Men in tailored suits. Women carrying notebooks and coffee cups. Executives. Entrepreneurs. Journalists. And somehow, they were all waiting for me. Nathan Cole. The man who once stood frozen at a rooftop party holding a divorced t-shirt while his marriage collapsed in front of strangers. Now I stood backstage adjusting my tie while my name flashed across giant screens beside the words. Rebuilding after betrayal. Vincent slapped my shoulder proudly. "Don't overthink it." Easy for him to say. My heart pounded hard enough to shake my ribs. Then the stage manager pointed toward the curtain. "It's time." The applause hit instantly when I walked into the lights. For a second, I couldn't move. Hundreds of faces stared back at me expectantly while cameras tracked every step toward the podium. Somewhere deep inside, the old version of me whispered that I didn't belong here. But another voice answered calmly. "You earned this." I adjusted the microphone slowly. 1 year ago, I began. I paid for a birthday party where my wife handed me a t-shirt labeled divorced. Soft laughter rolled through the audience. I smiled faintly. 5 minutes later, I walked out and accidentally rebuilt my entire life. Now they were listening. Really listening. I told them about the 157 missed calls. The mornings running through freezing streets before sunrise. The nights sitting alone in an apartment trying to remember who I was without somebody else defining my worth. I talked about discipline replacing heartbreak. How pain becomes fuel when you stop begging for closure. And for the first time in my life, I spoke without fear of taking up space. The room stayed completely silent. Not pity. Respect. When I finished, the applause rose slowly at first before exploding across the auditorium like thunder. People stood, clapped. Some even wiped tears from their eyes. I stepped away from the podium breathing harder than expected. Not from nerves. Relief. Backstage became chaos immediately. Interviews. Podcast invitations. Business cards shoved into my hands. A publishing company representative asked if I'd considered writing a book. Marcus called while I stood near the dressing room mirror loosening my tie. "You alive, superstar?" I laughed quietly. "Barely." "You should hear social media right now. Everybody's posting clips from your speech." "That bad?" "That good." For a moment, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. A year ago, I thought my life ended on that rooftop. Turns out it started there instead. 3 nights later, I returned home just before midnight. The apartment felt peaceful after Milan. Familiar. Strong. My suitcase rolled quietly across hardwood floors while city lights shimmered outside the windows. Then someone knocked on the door. 3 soft knocks. My chest tightened instantly. I already knew. Elena stood outside wearing a black coat soaked from rain, her mascara slightly smudged beneath exhausted eyes. She looked thinner now. Fragile in ways I'd never seen before. "Nathan." Her voice nearly broke saying my name. I stayed silent. "Can I come in?" Part of me wanted to refuse immediately. Another part remembered loving her once. So I stepped aside. She walked into the apartment slowly, looking around at everything that changed. The cleaner space. The calmer energy. The life rebuilt without her. "You look different," as she whispered. "I'm different." Her eyes filled immediately. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she looked down at her trembling hands. "I ruined everything." "Yes." But I didn't say it aloud. She stepped closer carefully. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but losing you destroyed me." Destroyed. Interesting word. Because she almost destroyed me too. "I miss us," she whispered. I looked at her quietly for a long moment before answering. "No," I said calmly. "You miss having someone who loved you unconditionally." Her face crumpled. Tears slid down her cheeks while rain hammered softly against the windows behind us. "I loved you," she insisted weakly. I shook my head slowly. "Not enough to protect me." The silence afterward felt enormous. Then something unexpected happened. She nodded. Not arguing. Not defending herself. Just accepting it. And somehow that hurt more than the tears. After a few minutes, Elena wiped her face and moved toward the door. "I really am sorry," she whispered. This time, I believed her. But belief and forgiveness are different things. I opened the door gently. She walked back into the rain without touching me, without looking back. And when the elevator doors finally closed around her, I felt nothing except peace. Real peace. Not revenge. Not victory. Freedom. I locked the door quietly, walked toward the balcony overlooking the sleeping city, and breathed deeply into the cold night air. Then I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I finally belonged to myself.